Hey guys, welcome back to another stream. We're back on the 2nd of October today, looking to analyze gold very early on into the month, but we're pushing, right? We're pushing, filling ranges, and let's see what we can catch for this month, potentially this week, and definitely tomorrow. I unfortunately will not be streaming. Sorry, I won't be. I will be streaming tomorrow, but I won't be trading New York tomorrow, sadly, due to some work things, but I'll be back on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. I'm continuing to trade, and yeah, we'll see how it goes. Can you guys hear me? You guys hear me alright? I've changed location, so hopefully audio is okay still, and the delay. Zay, if you can hear this, press 1. Alright, cool. That's pretty good. Amazing. Yeah, we had 9 viewers today waiting. Who are those 9 people? Right, I see 4 different people in the chat at the moment. We got 10 people already. Jesus. But yeah, join up. I've posted a link on all of the kind of areas that I think people are interested in kind of potentially joining. And again, as this goes on, just think about what kind of questions you have. Ideally, you've done your own analysis already, and you've come here just to learn about how you can adopt, a certain strategy, the DonVo strategy, but trade it in your own way. Right, you're understanding the concepts and everything. There is a fan. I'm gonna switch that off then. Right, is that better, Kurt? Like up the streams as well. Yeah, we got about a minute and a bit before we're just gonna get started. Gold's looking pretty nice at the moment, so we'll see what we can do. Yo. Yeah, for anybody who's come first time, welcome. We just do a pretty humble gold breakdown. Gold just cries every single night, every time we do this breakdown. Ayo, Bougie's here as well. Is everybody here trading Asian, actually? Because I don't trade Asian anymore, so I don't know how applicable this kind of analysis is for Asian session. I feel like I look at the very higher time frame ranges, which usually plays out when there's more volume. So typically I find that it's more like New York session, which happens. But maybe Asian. I think Asian this Asian session might be quite good actually, because we've actually started ranging in a specific area. So right, we have quite a few people here. I'm just gonna get started. Cool. All right, so welcome back. All right, let's just get straight into it. Monthly is in this range. Let's say, you could say it's here. Could say it's slightly lower at around these areas, but I like this. I like this as a general area. If it is any lower, we'll see it on the weekly and on the daily. But generally, this is the monthly, and what has it done? It's filled the range, right? It's filled at least this range to the left. So if it is going to continue filling ranges, it might just kind of finish around here, these sorts of areas. Maybe slightly higher around here. So if it does, right, we've filled, I'd say, the first range, which is exactly around here, right? You have some support here, some resistance there, some support here, right? So price has tapped this area, right? It doesn't mean that we're just going to take a buy here for it to just, start reversing all the way up, but we understand that it's in an area which it needs to make a decision at, right? So we're going to look into the kind of lower time frames to see what's happening, but just in terms of gold at the moment, we don't have a top wick for this, so this likely was a fake out to come back down, and it's just pushed, right? So these candles, these 4 candles, and including this current candle, what's gold done, right? It's come down, come back up, come down, come back up, and now it's just pushing, right? It's broken these lows here. It's broken these lows, and it's now currently here. So this is still market structure, and it wouldn't be, you know, out of the question to see gold potentially tap around these sorts of areas again, retest for that, you know, high, lower high, and then start jumping down. Hey, Jacob's here. Welcome. But yeah, so this is very much bearish structure. We understand that, you know, price is still very bearish. The monthly closed with barely no bottom wick, right? And then this month he just started pushing. We've pushed how many pips already this month? We've already pushed like 200 pips this month. So that's quite a lot, right? So let's jump to the weekly, right? We're in a decision zone on the monthly. So let's look at where we're at on the weekly. So on the weekly, we are kind of looking at these ranges potentially. There's a lot of mess around here, but it's just okay, so on the weekly, let's say we closed below, I would say here. It's quite nice. I like this. Here or here. There's two kind of areas here. I could say these are fake outs or whatever, but let's just say price closed below here, right? Every time it did, it drove down to these areas. We analyzed this yesterday. Drove to here. This one drove to here. This one drove to here. This one, you know, got some, you know, extra liquidity from around these areas, but then continued to drive, push down to these areas. This drove down and tapped here, right? So we can say that 1804, these sorts of areas here, is likely to get tapped. Regardless of what happens, this month is likely going to fill this weekly range, right? Every time it came down, you tapped. Every time you filled, right, and then made a decision towards either these sorts of areas, 1804 or 1772, right? So we're just looking for price to come down and tap our ranges, right? And then at that point we can look for potentially some reverse of structure, or, you know, we're looking for some change of, you know, this very bearish momentum that we currently are in. But before any of that happens, right, we're still quite a lot of pips away, right? We're still 240 pips away from where it needs to next make a decision. So we can definitely get some sells, right, coming down. It's just how, right? Looking at the weekly currently has no bottom wick, right? Honestly, I would expect the weekly to fill the range before coming back up to create that bottom range, that top wick, and then start, you know, flipping bearish again, and then we could be potentially looking to retest the lows at around 1700 sorts of areas. So that could happen, right? So as the weekly does that, it could be coming up, creating that top wick, fake out, similar to, you know, what happened in all these sorts of areas, right? Fake out here, all of these could be, you know, something similar to here, grabbing that top wick, tapping around these sorts of areas, right? 1883, we're understanding that this is still market structure, coming down, lower high, continue for a lower low. So that could definitely happen, right? But I'm expecting, as price is currently driving, it might, you know, range a little bit, and like it will come down, but I don't think it would create that weekly top wick until it taps these sorts of areas, right? But I could be wrong, right? As with everything. So let's look at the daily. Daily closed no bottom wick, right? It's very key. It also closed no top wick, right? So what does this mean? This candle essentially is just one push, right? It just did this. There was no retracement in terms of the daily, right? It didn't retrace at all, and it just pushed. So you could say it was a continuation of the previous candle, right? You grab liquidity, right? The previous candle came and grabbed liquidity towards the same kind of highs, right? And then it started pushing. So what does that mean, right? It means that we're just, you know, bearish below this range still. We're still, I would say, on the daily. Let's look at where levels are on the daily. So we have a level at approximately here. It's just, I want to confirm this is a level. Yeah, I like this quite a lot. I mean, you could potentially put it here. I like this as well. Slightly lower. Yeah, okay, so I would say your level is around 1832, and we closed below, right? We closed below with no bottom wick. This bottom wick is on the daily, so if you're trading the daily time frame, we could be potentially looking for reverse of structure, right? Or you could be just saying that, okay, this is just a lot of volume, and you've just pushed down, so you can continue to just push down after creating some form of top wick on a lower time frame. So we're understanding that the next range down for it to fill, right, it is going to be down towards these sorts of areas. This level 1805, 1806 sorts of areas lines up very well with with the weekly, right? The weekly, the daily, I would say it's a very strong level. Just looking left, it's quite a nice area that price does respect. So whatever happens, right, because it's now in this range, either you fake out, you start coming up to grab liquidity to come down, or you come down first and then you start driving back up because you've already filled the range. But regardless, right, both scenarios you have filled the range. So I'm looking for it to fill the range, right? You are around 250 pips away, I think. Yeah, like you're around 240 pips away. So because it's the daily time frame, you know, you can still get sells coming down. I will need to look on the smaller time frame though, because the daily has no bottom wick, so I don't know where it will retrace up to, right? Because usually you see a candle do this, right? And then if it's doing something like this, right, you have your open, right? Potentially there's no top wick on this candle. You've come down, and this is exactly what happened here, right? This is your no top wick, no bottom wick candle. Drove, you grab some liquidity and you continue to drive. What usually happens is something like this, right? This is another candle, but you've created, this candle has this body with no wicks. This candle has this. But these are the same, like in terms of price action, right? These are like, the candle can just appear in two different ways. Like, I would say for this candle, you've pushed down, so it's likely your next move is that it's going to retrace a little bit, grab more liquidity to come down, right? That's your next move. But for this move, we're expecting a wick fill, right? And that's why we always think about wick fills as, you know, this is a range. We're going to fill this range and we're going to create that lower low. So with this candle doesn't mean that we're not going to drive down, right? We've still pushed and we've closed below, and we need to look at what kind of levels those are at. But once it's kind of here, this is a more likely retracement than this, because if this retraces, it's just going to continue up, right? But this, because it has already retraced during the last part of the candle, it's likely to just come straight down. So just understand that. Let's jump on the lower time frame now. I'm just going to mark up some areas that I'm interested in on the daily, and then we can move towards 4 hours. So last time daily closed below, I'm going to be looking at this. I'm also going to be looking at this and also this. Alright, this not so much because we've just drove straight through, right? So we didn't really even reject out these sorts of areas. We just drove straight through. Yeah, I think I will only be looking at these kind of three areas for now. So let's jump on the 4 hour close, no bottom wick, right? So that was the last 4 hour of the daily. We closed with no bottom wick. What does that mean? You know, exactly what we just mentioned for the daily could happen on the 4 hour as well. Doesn't mean you don't have any, it won't continue to drive, but you know, it just needs to retrace. And then that's basically your liquidity grab to continue down. You have a level around here, right? 31 sorts of areas, even slightly lower maybe. No, I want it slightly higher. Actually, no, I want it here. This is perfect. So 30.3. Right, we've closed below. We've closed below on this 4 hour, and so what does this mean, right? So every time you close below in these sorts of areas, what happened, right? You close below here, no bottom wick, right? You grab liquidity to continue down. Like, the trend is still there even if there is no bottom wick. It's just this candle did exactly that. No bottom wick, no top wick, right? It just pushed. So you can just kind of align that with this candle and the next candle. So this candle just pushed, but it grabbed liquidity towards these sorts of areas at 1830, right? So I'm looking very specifically now at this. I want to see what this is on the lower time frame, and then I'm also going to mark up another range. My next range down is around here, so I'm looking for it to fill this range, because I understand that price fills ranges, right? So if price is going to fill this range, what is going to happen, right? Actually, I'm going to put this up to here because you have some minor resistance, some minor support here, some resistance there, and it looks like, you know, every time it came down, it definitely tapped these, and multiple times as well. I'm looking at this as well, right? It definitely tapped this area before needing more liquidity to drive down. So as you have a closure below, right, you need some liquidity before you can fill the range. So where is that liquidity? I'm looking at this area, looking at these sorts of areas as well, and those are my two that are in that kind of area. let's look here. So we're in this range, we've closed below, we just drove straight through, so nothing to see there. Potentially something around here, so we'll mark this up. You closed below, you filled the range, you came back up and you continue to go down, but I'm still looking at this level overall because you grabbed liquidity here to continue down, right? Looking here, it's kind of messy, but again, you grab liquidity around these areas before you drove even further down. So if we just zoom out a little bit, right, we have all these boxes, these mini boxes, right? So I'd say, you know, we're looking at around these sorts of areas for top wicks, right? Smack bang in the middle of everything. So when I look at top wicks, I look at ranges. I look at where the range is on the lower time frame and what that's likely to fill. So I know there's a range here, right? But is this the range that we're looking to play, right? Is this the range that we're looking price to fill before coming back down? So jumping down to the smaller time frame. All right, cool. So, you know, price broke below. It grabbed liquidity here once, here a second time. So what is this top of this range? I'm looking at potentially approximately these sorts of areas, right? For these top wicks. What was this? This is very nice as well, right? You filled this top. This could be a fake out, right? You could be faking out, or you could say this is the bottom wage and this is the fake out. But any given point, right? You tapped this level. You tapped it here. You tapped it here. For you to come down, you tapped it here and you tapped it here, right? So 1833 is a fantastic place to sell. And that's just based on, I'm currently on the 30-minute, right? And I haven't even looked at these other ones, but I'm guaranteeing you that it will align to some degree. So if you look, these sorts of areas, all right, you had a fake out here. This next candle respected this range, came down. You have some level of support. This was a fake out here. So this range, look at this, like this tapped exactly this level as well, right? So it's very likely it will come to fill that range. Looking here as well, look at this, right? Grab liquidity here, started pushing down. This was a fake out, right? You respected once, you faked out, went back up. Here as well, a bunch of these. And when you were bullish, right? You were bullish and you kind of just drove straight past, grabbed liquidity. And then I'm looking at these as well, right? So potentially pineapples at these sorts of areas. So what was that next range up? I'm looking at this. Yeah, this is a pretty good range. So if we do come up, potentially you'll get pineapples around here. So that's my second sell level. And how does that align in terms of what we have now, right? You can see this is the top of this range. So now that we have a breakout below here, taking a sell here makes a lot of sense, right? Because you've just done this. You're coming down. You've ranged. You know, you've created another range down here. You've broken down. So if you get a top wick, I'll be in there, right? And even if the top wick is like slightly higher, it's just better, right? And like, sure, you know, you could say that price is going to reverse in structure because it's creating a higher high. But if it does do that, it needs to break these lows, or at least these lows, come to this resistance, right? Or into this range before you can go up. So regardless, you will need to kind of fill these two ranges before anything happens. So just understanding that, right? So because you've closed here, I would say you probably didn't close on the lower time frame. You see here, like on the 15, let's look on the 5, right? The 5 didn't really close below. The 5 closed, you know, respecting and you're kind of pushing your way up. But if you look at the higher time frame, right, the hourly, the 4 hour, the 30-minute, you've closed below, right? And this is a higher time frame indication. No bottom wick here, sure, but the next candle did have a bottom wick, did have a top wick, didn't have much volume though, right? So I'm looking at potentially price to how many pips away are we for this position? We're about 43 pips, so it's not very far, right? If this 30 has no bottom wick, right, and this hourly has no bottom wick, it's fantastic, right? If we can close with no bottom wick but bullish, right, and then the next candle comes up, breaks all of these lows, creates this hourly high for this candle as well, breaks these highs, potentially selling around this zone, I'll be fantastic. And we'll be looking to target at least 1830 for 30 pips, but potentially even down to 1823 to fill the range, right? So those are my sells. So let's look for buys. So my sells are pretty clear. Does anybody have any questions on sells? I think those are pretty nice sells if we get there. I'm looking at buys, right? I'm understanding that buys is going to come and we're going to tap this level, right? Tapping this level doesn't mean that I'm just going to get into a buy, right? It means that, you know, price needs to make a decision here. So I need to see some form of structure here. If it's, you know, closing, you know, bullish respecting after a bearish candle respecting as well, or it potentially fakes out, we could be looking for positions, right? Because these wicks just now on the 4 hour are just candles that fill the range down. Look at this, you had a fake out, right? And I guarantee you even lower you had more fake outs. So I'm looking at buys potentially when we get to around these areas, but the prerequisite for this is that I need some structure, right? Can't just take a buy because it's just hit the level and I'm like, oh yeah, cool, it's hit there and I'm going to take a buy. You can, but then you're looking to target very minimal amounts, right? Potentially only up to around 20 pips up to here, which is still fine, right? Depending on how strongly it wicks into this area. But understand that price will need to make a decision at 1823. If it does something like this, you know, similar to this, it's creating this structure, cool, I'll have a buy here. Because I'm understanding that, you know, if price is changing structure, so let's zoom into, so was this February 17th, right? So let's look on the 15-minute February 17th. We're in July. I do not have enough candles for that. Let's look on the 30. I should have enough candles on the 30. Yeah. So let's look at this, right? What was this? This was just another filling of the range, right? You've come down from these sorts of areas, top wicks, right? You've come down, you filled the range. You know, you could be getting buys around these sorts of areas, right? You're looking to fill the range towards these sorts of areas before making a decision, right? And then this is your kind of decision, right? You've come down, you've broken but you've now broken structure, right? You've broken structure to continue up, so you could be getting buys here, getting buys here, right? So this is what we talked about, right? So if you're coming up, you've ranged here, and then you've come up, you've ranged here, and then you've come down to grab this liquidity here, right? Grab this liquidity before pumping up. So this is exactly what we did, just reversed, right? This is exactly what we look for in a sell. It's what we would look for in a buy as well. So wait for structure to be printed. Obviously, if you're going to take your first entry into this area, so potentially this wick here, that's fine. Understand that you're only going to be targeting up to here. Why? Because that's your next resistance, right? You're creating market structure like this. And so if you're taking this entry, you can only target up to here, right? Does that make sense? So I would say for now, my buys are around here, depending on structure, right? And then I'm also looking at these, right? I'm looking at these, right? These are very important. These two wicks here show exactly what the motion is. If we get this, I'll be so happy. Because look, this bearish candle closed no bottom wick, respecting the last higher high, right? And then he came down, broke all the lows, started pushing back up, right? You didn't even have a bottom wick for this candle, you just pushed straight up, right? So this is liquidity, right? You're on a 30-minute chart. If you go into the 15, I can't because we don't have enough candles, but if you go to the 15, you'll see that this is a range that is slowly coming down, and like if you go down to the 5 as well, it's trickling down. You'll see market structure print bearish in terms of the 5, but understand that on the higher time frame, you've closed respecting, right? It all forms one picture, right? Your 5 is coming down because, you know, you're grabbing liquidity, but on the higher time frame, it's just one wick, and it's just a steep push to come down to here and then a straight drive up. So yeah, so I would say those are my buy and sell levels for Asian London. I wouldn't say these are New York, because I would say there's a high chance that what is going to happen is you're going to tap these levels because it's not very far away. Like your buy is like a little bit far away, like 90 pips, but your sell, you're in like pretty prime time to look for sells. You're about 40 something pips away, right? So if you do get that and you get sells to come down, that'll be brilliant. But yeah, I would say that's the general idea for tonight. It's pretty simple. So I'm just going to look in chat now for questions. Hey, Nav's here as well. Welcome, welcome. Can I explain the types of market structure and liquidity? So Ali, you know, what we saw just now on the 30-minute, right here. This is market structure and this is liquidity. If you just look at this and what I drew just now, right? So come up, ranged in another range, come down, grab liquidity, breaking these lows even, right? To come up. So this is your liquidity grab. You're in a bullish structure, right? You formed range 1, range 2. You've broken all of those lows to grab liquidity. So a lot of people would be faked out here, right? You'd be like, oh shit, you're reversing now, so you could take a sell here. But no, you know, we understand this liquidity, so it's high chance. So this just mirrors this, right? This is exactly what this is. And there's multiple times you could have entered, right? Like even here, you had a bottom wick here. So this is your next higher high. You could have entered here. It created this, right? You had another opportunity here. So you had 2 opportunities here. So yeah. Doesn't matter how price moves towards 1833. Yes, of course. So if price moves so it's market structure, right? If price is you know trickling up, sure, I'll be looking to get a sell slightly higher up, because I understand that if price is doing this, right? If it's like doing this and then it's coming up to here, then sure, I'm looking for sells, but I potentially would be looking for it more at these sorts of areas, because at any given point you can get the buys to come up to retest, right? So I'm understanding that as well. So I wouldn't be able to take the sell here because this could just drive straight through. But if I'm looking at something that's like this, right? If we have this candle currently closing like this, next candle comes up, taps here, flips, right? And it's looking to flip, or it has no bottom wick. Cool. I'll be in a sell immediately at this area. Phobic, yeah. So what's your opinion when the market is in a range and it breaks up or down? So on the 30-minute candle, if it breaks above, the next 30-minute breaks the high of the previous candle. Okay, so what you're saying, right, is say you're on the 30-minute and you have this, right? So you have this candle and then price is kind of like, you know, fucking around here, and it breaks these highs. What does this show? What does this show in terms of price, right? What this shows is, let's just go back to our lines, right? So you had it open here, came up, sorry. You had something here, right? So you did this, came down, created a low, to create the high. Now you're here. Potentially came down slightly lower, right? You're breaking these highs, which means that you're following market structure to come up. So break of highs and breaks of lows are strong indications of a continuation in structure. But if, for example, you know, this is a bullish candle and then this, you know, suddenly becomes a bearish candle, right? So let's say this happened, right? I'm gonna make this slightly smaller. So let's say this happened, right? So let's draw this out. Price opened, came down, created a high, came here, broke these highs, right? But now you're creating a lower low and you closed here. So what does this indicate? This indicates potential market structure change, right? Because you've created that lower low, now you're making that lower high. So here we could be looking for sells to come down, right? So a break of a high or a break of a low, in this case, if it's breaking below here, then you just wick fill, then straight down, right? That's what you're looking for. So yes, I would say in general, breaking highs or breaking lows of the previous wick just indicates a continuation of the structure, but it also depends on where you are. So if you're at the top of the range already, or you're at the bottom of a range, understand that, you know, it needs volume to drive past. Yeah, no worries, Phobic. Cool. Yeah, you're off to bed, no worries. Yeah, so Ali, I've answered yours. If you go to the 5-minute, yeah, Nav, honestly, like you'll see so much structure everywhere. You'll like this was structure, right? You ranged here, like on the 30-minute, you ranged here, broke all these highs, came down, right? That's what happened last Asian as well. But yeah, what time frame do I look for the trade? Because on the lower time frame it looks like structure, but on the higher time frame it might be 1 or 2 candles. Yeah, so if it's 1 or 2 candles and it's like the 1 hour, it probably does have a lot of structure and range on the 5 and the 15, right? So it depends what ranges you're playing. Like if you're looking to catch these moves, you potentially, like, I would say the trade is more based off of like the 30 and the hourly. The 4 not as much, because like there's no structure on the 4, right? So it's based off the hourly and the 30. And then if you drop down to the 15, suddenly it doesn't make any more sense, right? Because you haven't closed bearish below. So what does this mean, right? This means that the time frames that you're mainly looking at and you're trading with this concept is the 30 and the hourly, which means that if you're in a trade, wait half an hour or wait an hour before making any decision, because that's what you're trading. You're trading for the 30 minute to fill the range, right? The 5 minutes could fluctuate a lot, right? But that shouldn't affect your understanding of what's happening. So I trade with all the time frames, like the 30 and the hourly give me direction, and like the 4 hour as well, like give me direction of price. Like if it's got clear closures below certain ranges, certain things like that, indicating that the market structure is continuing, reversing, or just ranging. There's no direction, right? And then the lower time frame gives me my entry. So I have actually recently just even gone down to the 1 minute and like just kind of played ranges. So I think this is what we had, right? We had loads of these trades. I think I caught this. So we were bearish, and we were breaking these, and then for some reason suddenly price just started ripping up. I think I took a sell at around these sorts of areas, like around here, I would say, understanding that this is the top of this range, right? So we're going to see some level of rejection here. So I entered the trade here, had my stop loss, I think like all the way up here, like here, like 60 something pips, but I was only playing a small range and I closed at I think 10 around here. So this is a 0.16 RR. Don't you love that? You love to see it. And then also there were some other trades. So I didn't take into account COMEX, but it makes a lot of sense, right? I took a sell around here, understanding that you've broken this structure, right? I knew you needed to grab liquidity, but I was like, okay, if it grabs liquidity, I'll just get into another pineapple. I had my stop, I think, above here, because I was like just looking and I didn't see COMEX, so I was like, fuck, and then it just kind of stopped me out here. But then the trade idea was right? We came down, we filled the next range down to around here, around 1835, and then we filled the next range down as well. So this was the liquidity grab on the 1 minute, right? So you can see liquidity being formed. There's you have general bearish structure, liquidity 1, liquidity 2, continue a push. When you guys are marking structure, do you usually use wicks or just a candle? So I use the candle closures as like areas it's respecting, right? So price can fluctuate quite a lot, and then it will close at certain levels, and if it respects certain levels, it means that cool, there wasn't enough volume for price to close below or above a certain level. But wicks is just like it tapping ranges. So for example, on this one, right, there was a range. Even this is the 1 hour, the 1 minute, right? There was a range between here and here, and it just filled the range. There's probably another range down to around these sorts of areas. It filled the range, right? It just filled both ranges, and this was a liquidity grab on the one, right? But this is what I would be looking for in terms of wicks. Like, has it got enough liquidity based off of the wick? Yeah, I hope that makes sense. Can I give an example of how I would execute a trade using multiple time frames? Let's say if it taps 1833. Yeah, okay, yeah, sure. It's quite specific. So, because it doesn't make sense on the 4, I'm not going to look at it mainly on the 4. I'll be looking at it on the 1 hour first, right? So, cool. What do I understand on the 1 hour? I'm understanding that this hourly, if it doesn't flip, it will have no bottom wick, right? But I'm also understanding that, you know, we've closed below 1830, so it's likely we're going to drive, right? If this candle flips as well, cool, it could also just continue to drive. We don't know. but I'm looking for sells around these sorts of areas. Why? Because I'm understanding it needs to grab liquidity before coming down. This could have been liquidity, but I don't think it's enough to grab to fill this entire range. So cool. So the hourly, I'm looking for just a general entry around these sorts of areas, understanding that this is a range, this is another range, right? So if we're ranging here and ranging here, it needs to grab liquidity before coming down. So I'm just looking for sells at around these zones, right? So that's the hourly. There's no entries on the hourly. Here I can see, cool, the 30-minute just closed. We're closing respecting, right? We're closing respecting and it's driving down first, which means if it starts breaking these lows, it might be difficult to get a sell, but we could be looking for buys. We could be looking for buys at around these areas once it grabs liquidity. But what I would need to see is it doing this. So it's coming down, coming up, coming down, right? I would need to see it do this, break above here, respect, and the next candle before going up grabs liquidity around these sorts of areas, flips, cool, I have a buy at these areas. Does that make sense on 30, right? So if that's what I'm looking for on the 30, let's drop down to the 15, right? So what's happening on the 15 at the moment? 15, we close respecting this here, but we also have no top wick here. So I'm understanding that there's a high chance that this range is going to be filled. Just this range, this tiny range from here to here is likely to get filled because this 15 has no top wick, right? There's a high chance that it will flip and fill this range up to here. Whether that's a wick or a closure, I don't know, right? But a wick should tap at least to these areas, and then at that point it can decide to come back down, right? If it doesn't, then cool, it's just gonna come down, break these lows, and just continue pushing down. So on the 15, does it make sense to take a buy? Does it make sense to take a sell? You have to think about those things, right? At the moment, there are no sells or buys within this range because, again, you're in a range here, and you're a second range here. So if we wanted to get into a sell, we'd be looking for this, right? So ranges here, spike down. So we'd be entering here. So this is what it looks like on the 15, right? And then if this is going to be matching what we're looking for on the hourly, right? Does it need to come up to here? Not necessarily, but if it does, right, we have a very high chance of it, driving to fill certain ranges before it does anything. Cool. Let's look on the 5 now. Right, let's look at the 5. Let's see what the 5 is doing. So currently with the 5, right, we had a most recent fake out here, right? We faked out and we've used that liquidity to drive up to these sorts of areas. There is a 5 support here, or like resistance here. You close respecting once, respecting twice, right? But you also faked out. So if that is a fake out on the 5, right, we're understanding that it could just come down to fill this range. So if you took that fake out to come down, that is a 10 pip range and potentially a 11 pip range, right? So it's very likely going to get filled because you've just broken below, and if you close below, I would say these sorts of areas, 1828 or even 1827, then you're just free to start driving down on the 5. So what does that mean in terms of our entry? If it closes below here, we're looking for this, right? So you've ranged here, come down, you've ranged here. If it breaks this, we're looking for a top wick to come down. So there's multiple ways you can play this. Either you're looking for that top wick, could be here, could be here, could be, I don't know where it could be, right? But if it's around here, might not be able to get anything. If it breaks this high, could be looking for something around these sorts of areas. But you could also play the breakout. So if price breaks below this area, right, you could be looking for it to respect and then come down, and then you would have your salary. But if price just breaks out the first time, I would be slightly worried because we understand that on the hourly and 30, right, what we just analyzed is that it doesn't have a top wick. 30 has no top wick, right? The hourly, it does have a top wick and it could flip, but it's like conflicting. So are you going to create a top wick for the 30, or are you going to flip and create that bottom wick for the hourly and continue to drive? So in this area, it's not clear. So I probably won't have any trades for half an hour. Does that make sense, bud? That's as clear as I can make it. And what I do is I just then take that down to the 1 minute. I can't show you the 1 minute because there's a lot of noise, and I'm still figuring out, but it's worked for me. You know, I'm, in terms of my concepts, I'm like 29 win streak at the moment, so we'll see. We're just testing. But yeah, let me know if that makes sense. Any other questions for me? If not, I'm happy to end it here. I feel like it's been a pretty good stream. You know, if this hourly flips, it could be quite nice. Let's look at what it's potentially respecting, right? Like, what is the flip looking like? Because I guarantee you there's also another smaller time frame level at around these sorts of areas. Yeah, you see this? So if it flips, it doesn't mean that I'm definitely going to get into a sell, because I understand that your previous hourly closed respecting here. So yeah, I'm going to need to wait for at least 23 to get tapped, potentially 19 to get tapped. Amazing, right? Fantastic. I'm gonna call it here then. Thank you very much for joining up. We'll be back tomorrow, obviously. So if you have any questions, if something that that I said today makes you think about certain things, keep those in mind, and then potential questions tomorrow would be good as well. What's my funded strategy? You have a limited time. See, that's I think there's an issue. So limited time fucks you, I think, because with our strategy, like, we have a low risk to reward, right? We have a negative RR, which means that a lot of you have unlimited. Then honestly, don't over risk, right? I'm on 100k. I started off with one lots, right? And one lots means that I have 5 potential entries before I'm at 5% drawdown, and each of those entries have 100 pips stop loss, right? So that's 4 pineapples on top of my normal position. So there's no need to over risk, but at the same time, you want to balance that out with, like, you want to slow down your funded way too slow, right? You don't want to you don't want to be in a position where you're still on your funding phase 1 half a year into the challenge, right? So balance that out, find your medium, potentially leave space for like 2 pineapples, maybe 3 pineapples, depending on how you trade, but it does need to come from your own trading style. Like, my trading style works for me, right? And I'm still figuring that out, but it needs to work for you. Like, do you trade exactly like we do? If you do, right, like, I would say even my trading style now compared to Don's is different, right? So for me, using a higher risk per trade might make more sense, right? But for you, it might not. So it just depends on how you're playing the ranges, and like what your stop loss is at and what your take profit is at. Do you close at 10 pips? There's a bunch of things you need to figure out yourself. But yeah, cool. I'm gonna end it here. Thanks for joining, everyone, and we'll be back tomorrow. If you are a trading Asian, good luck. Have your analysis, stick to your plan, and have a stop loss. Never not have a stop loss, because that could fuck you. But yeah, amazing. Cheers, everyone. Speak to you guys tomorrow.